Did you know Andrew Jackson had a bullet lodged near his heart for his entire presidency? Andrew Jackson was born in 1767 on the Carolina frontier to Irish immigrant parents with nothing. He lost his father before he was born. By 16, the Revolutionary War had taken his mother and both brothers. He was completely alone. Jackson taught himself law, moved to Tennessee, and built a reputation as a man who feared nothing and backed down from no one. He fought over 100 duels in his lifetime. One left a bullet less than an inch from his heart. Doctors said removing it would kill him, so it stayed there for nearly 40 years. He rose through the military, crushed the British at the Battle of New Orleans in 1815, and became a national hero. In 1829, he became the 7th President of the United States, the first ever born into real poverty. He opened the White House to ordinary people on Inauguration Day. Thousands showed up. Jackson proved that in America, surviving was enough to make you powerful. Did you know the man who built China was killed by his own medicine? Qin Shi Huang was born in 259 BC and became king of the Qin state at just 13 years old. By 221 BC, he had conquered every rival kingdom and unified China for the first time in history. He was 38 years old. What he built next was staggering. He standardized the Chinese writing system, the currency, and the roads. He connected existing walls into what became the Great Wall. He created a civilization that would last 2,000 years. But Qin Shi Huang was terrified of death. He ordered his alchemists to find a potion that would make him live forever. They gave him mercury pills. He took them daily, convinced they were the answer. The mercury slowly poisoned his mind. He grew paranoid, isolated, and delusional in his final years. He died at 49, killed by the very pills meant to save him. He built an army of 8,000 terracotta soldiers to guard him in the afterlife because he couldn't let go of control even in death. The man who created China couldn't survive his own ambition. Did you know Nelson Mandela was on the U.S. terrorist watch list until 2008? Nelson Mandela was born in 1918 in a small South African village. He became a lawyer and joined the fight against apartheid, the brutal system that stripped black South Africans of their rights and freedom. In 1964, the government sentenced him to life in prison. He spent 27 years locked on Robben Island, breaking rocks in a quarry under the hot sun. The world campaigned for his release. The government refused for decades. When they finally opened his cell door in 1990, South Africa was on the edge of civil war. His own supporters were ready to fight. Mandela had every reason for fury. He chose something harder. He chose forgiveness. In 1994, he became South Africa's first democratically elected president. He built a truth and reconciliation process instead of revenge trials. He stepped down after one term, proving power was never the point. Mandela's story is proof that the most radical thing a man can do is refuse to become what hurt him. Did you know Ulysses Grant was a failed shopkeeper before he became the general who ended the Civil War? Ulysses Grant was born in 1822 in Ohio. He graduated from West Point and served in the Mexican War, but peacetime broke him. He drank too much, lost job after job, and ended up working in his father's leather goods shop in Illinois. He was 38 years old and going nowhere. Then the Civil War started. Within 4 years, Grant rose from obscurity to command the entire Union Army. He pushed harder than any general before him and forced the Confederacy to surrender in 1865. He then served 2 terms as the 18th President of the United States. But life knocked him down again. He went bankrupt in his 60s and was diagnosed with throat cancer. Dying and nearly penniless, he spent his final months racing to finish his memoir so his family would have something after he was gone. He finished it 4 days before his death. The book became a bestseller and is still considered one of the greatest military memoirs ever written. Grant won the war. Then he left his family a book. Did you know the CIA helped put Saddam Hussein in power? Saddam was born in 1937 in a mud hut near Tikrit, Iraq. His father was gone before he was born. He grew up dirt poor, raised by an abusive stepfather, and taught himself to read as a teenager. He joined the Ba'ath Party at 20 and quickly became known as someone willing to do whatever it took. In 1959, he took part in an assassination attempt against Iraq's prime minister. It failed, and he fled the country with a bullet in his leg, but he came back. By 1979, he had seized full control of Iraq. The United States, looking for a counterweight against Iran, backed him with weapons, intelligence, and money through the 1980s. Then he invaded Kuwait in 1990, and everything changed. America turned against him. In 2003, U.S. forces invaded Iraq. Saddam was found hiding in a small underground hole near his hometown, looking nothing like the untouchable ruler he once was. He was hanged on camera in 2006. The same world that watched him rise watched him fall. Did you know not a single word of Shakespeare's writing survives in his own handwriting? William Shakespeare was born in 1564 in Stratford-upon-Avon, a small English town far from the centers of power and learning. His father was a glove maker. His children could not read or write. When Shakespeare died in 1616, he left behind no books, no letters, and no manuscripts. And yet somehow, this man produced 37 plays and 154 sonnets that changed the English language forever. Hamlet, Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet. Works that captured human emotions so deeply that scholars still study them 400 years later. Here is what makes it so strange. The more historians dig into the real Shakespeare, the less he looks like the greatest writer who ever lived. No university education. No record of travel to the Italian cities he described so precisely. Almost no personal documents at all. The plays exist. The genius is undeniable. But the man behind them remains one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. Some questions are too big to ever fully answer. Did you know Ivan the Terrible killed his own son and destroyed his entire dynasty in one moment of rage? Ivan IV was born in 1530 and became ruler of Russia at just 3 years old. He grew up surrounded by scheming nobles who treated him like a puppet. That shaped him forever. As a young Tsar, Ivan was brilliant. He reformed the government, expanded Russia's territory, and built St. Basil's Cathedral. He was a real visionary. But when his beloved first wife Anastasia died in 1560, something inside him broke. He became convinced everyone around him was a traitor. He created the Oprichnina, a personal death squad that terrorized the Russian nobility for years. Fear became his only tool. Then, in 1581, during a heated argument, Ivan struck his own son and heir so hard that the young man died 3 days later. He wept over the body. He painted an icon in his son's memory. But the damage was done. With no strong heir, Russia collapsed into the time of troubles, a decade of famine, civil war, and chaos. Ivan built an empire and then destroyed it with his own hands. Did you know the man who ended the Soviet Union spent his whole life insisting that was never the plan? Mikhail Gorbachev was born in 1931 in rural Russia, the grandson of peasants who survived Stalin's purges. He rose through the Communist Party the hard way, working his way up over decades until he reached the very top in 1985. He genuinely believed in socialism. He loved the Soviet idea. He just thought it needed fixing. So he introduced 2 historic reforms. Glasnost, meaning openness, allowed free speech. Perestroika meant restructuring the economy. His goal was to save the Soviet Union, not destroy it. But once people could speak freely, they could not be silenced. Republics demanded independence. The system cracked faster than anyone imagined. By 1991, the largest country in history had dissolved. Gorbachev did not celebrate. He spent the next 30 years arguing that the collapse was never what he wanted. Reagan gets the credit. But the Cold War ended because a true believer tried to save something he loved, and the attempt tore it apart. Did you know Saladin sent his own doctor to heal the enemy king trying to destroy him? Saladin was born around 1137 in Tikrit, in what is now Iraq. He was Kurdish by birth and rose through the ranks of the Muslim world, not through royal blood, but through skill, discipline, and loyalty. In 1187, he retook Jerusalem from the Crusaders. The Christian army had massacred thousands when they seized the city 88 years earlier. Saladin let the population leave safely. No slaughter, no revenge. Then came Richard the Lionheart. England's greatest warrior king arrived in 1191 to take Jerusalem back. The 2 men fought across the Holy Land for over a year in one of history's most legendary military rivalries. Richard never broke Saladin's hold. Saladin never crushed Richard's army. When Richard fell seriously ill, Saladin sent his personal physician to nurse him back to health. They never met face to face. Not once. They eventually signed a peace treaty in 1192. Neither man got everything he wanted, but the world remembered which one acted with honor. Did you know Gaddafi ruled Libya for 42 years without ever holding an official title? Muammar Gaddafi was born in 1942 in a tent in the Libyan desert to a nomadic family. He grew up with almost nothing, but he had one obsession: power. At just 27 years old, he led a military coup and took control of Libya overnight. Then he did something no dictator had done before. He built a system of government where he held no official position at all. No president, no prime minister, no title anyone could strip away. He called himself brother leader and ruled absolutely, with no legal way to remove him. Oil money flooded in, and he spent it funding terrorism across the world, putting him directly in Ronald Reagan's crosshairs. American bombs hit his compound in 1986. He survived. For decades, no system, no enemy, and no bomb could touch him. Then in 2011, the Arab Spring reached Libya. His own people rose up. The man who had made himself untouchable was captured and killed in a roadside ditch. He had built the perfect system. He just never planned for the people inside it. Did you know Reagan was shot in the chest just 69 days into his presidency? Ronald Reagan was born in 1911 in a small town in Illinois. His early life gave no hint of greatness. He became a Hollywood actor, appearing in B-movies, and most serious people never took him seriously. But Reagan had something most politicians didn't: conviction. He believed in America with a certainty that never wavered, even when everyone laughed at the idea of an actor running for office. He became governor of California, then set his sights higher. Critics said he was too old, too simple, too extreme. He won the presidency in 1980 in a landslide. 69 days later, a bullet stopped less than 1 inch from his heart. From his hospital bed, he joked with surgeons that he hoped they were all Republicans. He was back at work within weeks. He stood at the Berlin Wall and told Gorbachev to tear it down. And Gorbachev actually did it. Reagan's story proves that conviction, held long enough, can change the world. Did you know Spartacus had a way out of Italy and his own army voted to stay? Spartacus was a Thracian gladiator who became the most feared name in Rome. In 73 BC, he led a breakout from a gladiator school in Capua with just 70 men. Within 2 years, that number had grown to over 100,000. He crushed 8 Roman legions. He marched his army to the Alps, ready to scatter north and disappear into freedom. Then his own men refused to leave. They wanted to keep fighting. They wanted revenge. That vote changed everything. Rome sent Crassus, its richest and most ruthless general. He built a wall of trenches across the entire peninsula to seal them in. Spartacus fought his way through, but his coalition was fracturing. Groups broke off. Fights broke out among his own ranks. In 71 BC, the final battle came. Spartacus died fighting. His body was never found. 6,000 of his followers were crucified along the Appian Way for 350 miles. Rome left them there as a warning. Spartacus never lost to Rome. He lost to the impossibility of keeping free people united. Did you know a sickly 19-year-old outlasted every general in Rome and built an empire that lasted 400 years? Augustus was born in 63 BC, the grandnephew of Julius Caesar. He was small, often sick, and had zero military reputation. When Caesar was assassinated in 44 BC, Rome's toughest generals laughed at him. Mark Antony called him a boy who owed everything to his uncle's name. They were right about the name. They were wrong about the boy. Augustus used Caesar's legacy to raise a private army at 19. He played Rome's warring factions against each other, made alliances he never intended to keep, and waited. One by one, every rival fell. Brutus, Cassius, then finally Mark Antony himself in 31 BC. He then did something no conqueror had ever done. He took total power and convinced everyone he hadn't. He called himself the restorer of the Republic, while quietly becoming its permanent ruler for 40 years. Julius Caesar gets the glory. Augustus built the world Caesar only dreamed about. Did you know Charlemagne spent his whole life trying to learn to write and never fully could? Charlemagne was born around 742 in what is now Western Europe, the son of a Frankish king. By his 30s, he had become the most powerful ruler on the continent, conquering the Franks, the Saxons, and dozens of other peoples through relentless military campaigns. But Charlemagne wanted more than conquest. He ordered churches and monasteries across Europe to build schools. He demanded that clergy learn to read. He surrounded himself with the greatest scholars of his age and rebuilt education across a shattered continent. And every single night, he kept a writing tablet under his pillow, practicing letters in the dark, trying to master the one skill he believed defined civilization. He never did. On Christmas Day in the year 800, the Pope crowned him Emperor of the Romans in Rome. The man who could barely write had just united most of Western Europe. The lands he built eventually became France, Germany, and Italy. Charlemagne didn't need to read to understand that knowledge was the most powerful thing in the world.